you and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this video, we're gonna be a bit of an El Culture vulture and learn some Italian. The word scrivo, right, means to write. And in this story, you couldn't write it. You could not make it up. It is absolutely bananas. It's absolutely off the wall. It's just... Donna Scrivo lived in Michigan. Classic, that's another place rising up the charts. With her son Ramsay and hubby Daniel. This story will take us to the distant year of 2014 and beyond, but like backwards, as we look at the strange Scrivo family story. Ramsay, he had his fair share of troubles, his mama Donna, straight from HE double hockey sticks, being one of them. So let's give it a go, you and I, come on. So let's start with the where. St. Clair Shores sits on, well, St. Clair if you can believe it. It's part of the greater Detroit metro area, and it was where Ramsay Scrivo was born in 1981, to parents Donna and Daniel. Ramsay had one older brother, they both went to an all-boys Catholic school. Donna had high expectations for her kids. Ramsay graduated college in 1999, worked for a few accounting firms, but by his late 20s realised that wasn't for him when his work ethic was criticised by his boss. He wasn't too much of a fan of the old clickety-clackety? Or is it clackety-clackety? I can never remember. So from there, Ramsay decided to get into his dad's house painting business, and that went on, So far, so good, or at least it is in the way I'm telling it. And that takes us to about 2014, when Ramsay Scrivo disappeared. On the 25th of January 2014, after 6 p.m, Ramsay left the house he lived in with his mama Donna to go get some cigarettes, and he never returned. Oldest trick in the book. Or was it? The next day, Donna reported Ramsay missing to the police.
My name is Donna Scrivo, and that's the Detroit Scrivo. He went out for a walk yesterday at 6:30.
She told them she had already gone around town to the bars and places he frequented, and saw neither hide nor hair of him. She wasn't too worried though at the time, he'll show up, eventually. He will. But she had been calling and calling him on his mobile, no answer. Police alerted the surrounding communities to be on the lookout for Ramsay. That winter was exceptionally cold, and they also got in touch with Ramsay's probation worker. See, about a year before, Ramsay got in trouble with the law for assaulting one of his friends at a bar, and had problems with drugs and alcohol and a history of mental health issues. His probation worker, upon learning that Ramsay was nowhere to be found, really also began to worry about what kind of trouble Ramsay could be up to or in. The police checked in with who they knew he'd been in contact with shortly before he left. No dice. Donna told the police that Ramsay left with his wallet to go get smokes. In his wallet were 2 credit cards and his driver's license. So the police, they wanted to track his cards. And they also asked Donna for a picture they could provide to the media to aid in the search. She never gave them one. She didn't want the media involved at all. Ramsay's phone would eventually be found in the front garden of a neighbour's house. Now, the neighbour knew nothing, and Ramsay's phone could provide not much either. The one thing was that Donna had told the police she'd tried calling and calling, and he wasn't picking up. But when the police got Ramsay's phone, right, ain't no calls from Donna. Neighbours of Ramsay's would tell the police they hadn't seen him for days before Donna reported him missing, and one neighbour in particular told the police that she smelled a chemical odour coming from his place. The home he shared with his mama, Donna. In 2006, 12 years earlier, parents Donna and Daniel actually bought Ramsay that abode as they were worried about him. He was suffering with depression, had anger issues, and was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. They wanted to know he wasn't too far from the coop. which was good as Ramsay was kind of on and off his medication, which came with some tough side effects to boot. Sometimes Ramsay was convinced someone had placed poison in his drink or a nanochip was in his tooth, listening in to his every conversation. In 2010, Ramsay got into a fight which left Ramsay with a head injury after he cracked his head on the concrete. As we've seen before, this just exacerbated Ramsay Scrivo's mental health issues. He was out of control, more now. He was drinking more. He was angrier. He got into trouble more. And issues, that were somewhat under control, now, not so much. This would eventually lead him to being charged with assault and on probation and getting his probation worker. The one that would, in a couple of years, become worried about where he was. He had to report to this worker frequently, required to do drug and alcohol tests multiple times a day. Unfortunately, his mental health got worse when in May 2013 his dad died. He passed away from a long illness. The two were really close, best buds. The death of Daniel Scrivo had a massive impact on Ramsay, and Ramsay, would say that if his dad goes, so does he. Daniel Scrivo protected Ramsay from his mother and his mother's expectations. Expectations that were dashed when he decided to become a house painter and leave accounting. As Ramsay could be a danger to himself and others, already was and had been, and not just that, there were suspicions that he was taking his dad's morphine, his family, including Donna, filed for a petition to get Ramsay hospitalized. He was undiagnosed with psychosis. At the same time, Donna filed for the legal guardianship of Ramsay, first and foremost to make sure he was taking his medications upon release. After this, he was let home. Donna and Ramsay stayed together at the family house, but then, due to an electrical fire... By the way, that fire actually is interesting. It started in the basement, where Ramsay slept. Donna got out, called the fire boyos, and then didn't really give a shit that Ramsay was still in the house as it was engulfed in flames. Now, luckily, they managed to get Ramsay out of there in the nick of time, and it was later deemed to be a suspicious fire. But that was it. There wasn't really much of an investigation. Case closed. And so the two moved together to Ramsay's condo, which, was a bad idea. Donna was extremely controlling of Ramsay. She would say it's for his own good, making sure he's looked after, taking his medication the way he should. He was troubled and needed somebody to take care of him. Unfortunately, his own mother was not that person. Donna Scrivo was born in 1954 in Dallas, Texas. Texas again. And always wanted to become a nurse. And so she became. After Donna met Daniel, they got married in August 1978. 2 months later, Jason, that's Ramsay's older brother, was born. Then they moved to Michigan, Dan's home state, and settled in St. Clair Shores. Ramsay coming 3 years later. In 2003, Donna had a massive heart attack, almost died, right there on the operating table. That whole experience, as you can imagine, was not a beneficial one for Donna. She became forgetful, anxious, she left her nursing job, became a home nurse. Now, Donna's sickness, if you could call it that, and Ramsay's issues wasn't the only problem in the Scrivo family. Daniel was sick for most of his life. He was coping with hepatitis C. He'd gotten it from when he was a teenager and needed to have open heart surgery. And that is what would kill him in 2013. As the year of 2013 waned, a tough year for Ramsay, losing his dad, getting over the head injury, he actually started doing better. He was taking his meds, fixing up his life. Now, Donna still had guardianship over 32-year-old Ramsay. But in June of that year, Ramsay planned to petition the court to terminate the guardianship in 6 months if he cooperated with treatment and medication, and, more importantly, followed his mother's rules. Don't mess with Mama Donna. Once Ramsay and Donna were living together, family members began to worry, a little bit about them, because Donna was, a nightmare. And Ramsay was under her thumb. Jason, the other son, had long moved out of state, and with Dan dead, it was just Donna and Ramsay, kind of. 8 months before Dan passed away, Donna went to a high school reunion back in Texas. She went alone and may have met an old flame from the past. She returned to Michigan after, but was constantly texting this guy. However, after Dan passed away, she may have wanted to move back down south. Home for her. Though Ramsay, he, quote, didn't give a shit. And then he disappeared in January 2014. The search was ongoing, from when Donna reported him missing on the 26th. Neighbors interviewed and having some, interesting olfactory insights. His phone, when it was discovered, led nowhere. No one had seen him. It was just like he vanished. And then came the 30th of January. A lady was driving on a snowy rural road and had seen something on the side. A collection of black bags. 3 of them, to be precise. And she looked inside. She saw what appeared to be intestines. After, she got back into her car and kept driving and saw another bag with what seemed to be a human head next to it. She immediately called the police.
When investigators came out to check it out, that's when they found body parts in several different garbage bags. Some of the body parts included a head and a torso. Initially, they couldn't identify the sex. Now, as you said, they believe it is a single male man who was disposed of after his body parts were separated into these trash bags. Then this morning, they got another call about a piece of trash in a bag outside of an off-ramp nearby. They reported that in that bag they found clothing that was charred and some paperwork that was related to the case, but no more body parts. They're hoping that with the information they have, with the paperwork and the clothing, and now this autopsy, they'll be able to piece this together, but at this point, they do not have a victim identified.
And soon more bags emerged. Inside the bags were human remains, chopped up. Also, a jigsaw with 4 saw blades, clothing that seemed to belong to a woman, a Coke bottle, and some charred papers. Police determined the body to be of a white man. The case was treated as a homicide from the get-go. Don't know, what else you would treat it as when you find a chopped up body. Missing people from the surrounding counties were checked and crossed off, and fingerprints were taken from the body and ran through the system.
Identification of the deceased and notification is first and foremost, and then tracking down the leads, find out, obviously backtrack on where they were and how they ended up in the situation we have. And this is somebody's son or brother or husband. We hope we can get identification and get some closure for a family somewhere.
A match came back. It was, get this, dun dun dun, Ramsay Scrivo. His autopsy was carried out on what was left of him. Good luck. His cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation, though the autopsy also showed a massive dose of Xanax in his system, 4 times what he was prescribed. The dosage could have killed him on its own. His body had been cut into 14 different pieces. His right arm wasn't found in the garbage bags. A witness then came forward to the police and said she had seen a woman dropping off the bags, and she was driving an SUV.
Well, right now joining me is St. Clair County Sheriff Tim Donnellan with some new information. Sheriff, what can you tell us?
Yes, we're going to be releasing a picture of a person of interest that we hope citizens can hopefully help us identify, as well as a vehicle, which we'd also like to see if we can tie up.
I know you're still working on this case actively. Can you tell us anything about how you came up with this information?
Through investigative measures, we received some video, and we've been enhancing it, working on it this afternoon, and we've got a pretty good picture of a vehicle, as well as a picture of a female we're also trying to track down to speak with.
A nearby gas station captured CCTV footage of this woman driving a 1990 Chevy Blazer. The mystery woman was none other than, dun dun dun,
stop right there, criminal scum!
Donna Scrivo.
I have some unfortunate news. I know that you thought that you've seen the videos, the TV reports, well, for St. Clair County. We believe that that's your son. I'm sorry.
I really want my son.
Did he have friends in St. Clair County?
Not really.
When's the last time you lived there?
I had a patient up there a couple years ago.
Well, I'm a little confused. I know you were in St. Clair County yesterday.
No. Would it help you if you looked at the pictures? Pictures, come on. You can look at them yourself. That is me. If you're telling me that I got to get gas there, that I'm listening to just a driver and I'm looking for it.
Hoping that you're going to start remembering a little bit more so that we can figure out what in God's name happened here.
I'm happy as answers for you.
We know you're not a bad person. I think you're just a type of person who's been dealing with the son with severe mental issues. That wears. I've been doing.
I didn't kill my son.
Did he kill himself? But you didn't want people to know that, and you thought this might be a way to cover it up?
Yeah, I didn't kill my son. I didn't want to say.
I don't know. Just the truth.
I think it's time I say a name alive.
She was arrested as the main suspect in Ramsay's death, and then she was charged with the dismemberment and removal of her son's body.
And we're getting our first look at the St. Clair Shore's mother, tonight facing charges in connection with dismemberment of her own son.
The mother's also accused of dumping her son's remains. 7 Action News investigator Jim Kirchner is live now. Jim, why wasn't the mother charged with murder?
Because the autopsy, the medical examiner's report is not complete. It's inconclusive right now. Remember, this was a body that was cut up and then the parts tossed out the window of a moving vehicle in as many as 5 different places. So the pending murder case still rests with the medical examiner.
Police got search warrants for both the vehicle in question and Ramsay's condo. But it turned out there was a bit of a problem in finding, Donna's car. You'll get that when she tried to give it away to a charity in Detroit, which she did. She did the exact same thing to Ramsay's car also. She was just, take it, please. Once the cars were, retrieved, his blood was found in them. Ramsay's, unsurprisingly. But the car wasn't the crime scene. No. It was the condo. And, when they entered the place, the smell of bleach was overwhelming, just like the neighbor said. Upon forensic investigation, blood evidence was recovered from multiple locations. Ramsay's blood was found in the bathtub, his bedroom wall, the porch, and the hand railings of the house. The most gruesome place was the bathtub. Not that there was a lot of blood there or anything like that. The bathtub had signs of burning inside of it. While Donna was in custody, nail clippings of hers, as well as hair samples and that kind of stuff, were taken. Her DNA was found on the Coke bottle that was in one of the garbage bags. But that was it. Her DNA wasn't actually on the body, though there was still a fair bit going against her. A local Lowe's store stated that on the 27th of January, Donna bought a jigsaw during the day. She then later returned at the evening again, as she had some problems with charging the saw. The same branded jigsaw was found in the garbage bag. Now, there was a problem with the serial number of the saw. The police weren't 100% sure it was the same one Donna had actually bought. But, I don't think that's enough to give her, the benefit of the doubt.
His father passed away in May of last year, is that right?
That's my understanding.
Yes. Is that a factor in any of this at all? Did that start things going downhill for this family?
From what I understand, it did have obviously a negative impact on the family.
And without saying, as you put together your theory in this case, backed by physical and other evidence, have you established a motive in this?
I'm not able to comment on it at this time.
Even a yes or no answer?
Not at this time.
But why? What made her, do something, commit something this evil, to her own son? Such a gruesome thing to do. He had, issues, but he was her son, and he seemed to be on the mend more than anything as well. So, the why, the motive? No idea. The prosecutors didn't have one either when it went to trial in May 2015. Donna pled not guilty. The prosecutor said the Xanax found in Ramsay's system was Donna's prescription. It was filled with a 90-day supply in January, at the start of the month, and only had one pill remaining when Ramsay was found 30 days later, so she was popping them back or popping them in Ramsay. She needed a way to subdue her son. She drugged him up. And just before the murder took place, Donna had actually bought carpet shampoo. So she was thinking ahead. Though when Donna took the stand, she'd quite the story to tell. Yeah. It was maybe premeditated, but not by her. She told the jury, the attorneys, and the judge that on the 25th of January, a masked man broke into the condo, went into Ramsay's room to kill him. Donna said she was down in the basement doing some laundry, and upon going upstairs, she found the front door open, and that's when she checked in on Ramsay and found the man in his bedroom. The man tied her to the bed and killed Ramsay. Then he made her dispose of the body and told her that if she didn't do so, she was gonna die as well. According to the story, it was the idea of the masked man to donate the cars, to buy the jigsaw for the dismemberment, and so on and so forth. He came, with a to-do list, as you do. The mysterious man was supposedly in the house with her for 5 whole days. Even when she went to report Ramsay missing, he was waiting for her in the condo.
Did you recognize anything about that person's voice?
No.
Did you recognize anything about the person's gait or the way he walked?
No.
Did you recognize anything about his mannerisms?
No.
You believe you had ever seen that person before?
I don't think so.
He made you go to Lowe's?
Yes.
For the specific purpose of getting something?
Yes.
And that something was what?
A saw.
And when you got to Lowe's and you saw those big, strong men working inside there, didn't you tell them, this person killed my son and he's threatening me?
No.
Why?
Well, I'll tell you right now why I'm afraid for my family.
Donna told the courts while on stand that she was handcuffed to the bed most of the time. She was only let free when the man needed phone calls and errands to be done. As you can imagine, the prosecution took a lot of pleasure in ripping the story to shit.
Why did he let you live?
I ask my question.
Why did he let you live?
I ask myself, you don't think I'd rather be gone and my son here?
Why don't you take a chance? Why don't you do something?
Tell me what you wanted me to do, Mr.
I'll tell you what, he's in the car when you're at the police station hiding in the back of your Ford Escape. Why don't you go to Officer Mason and say, Officer, the guy, the killer, the intruder, is in the back seat of my car. He just murdered my son in cold blood. He put me in handcuffs. He beat me. He chained me to my bed. And he's in your parking lot. Please help me. You indicated we drove around. We drove to Lowe's. We drove to the probation department. We drove to State Farm. He's in the car with you Monday morning.
Yes, sir. He was not in the car at the police station. Sir, I didn't want to testify. I'm going to be confused. I'm going to misspeak.
Well, you didn't want to testify? You had a right not to testify, and you're up here testifying. I get a right to ask you questions whether you like them or not. So let's keep going, okay? Because here we are. You're at the police station. One time you say he's in the car. The next time you say, now you're saying he's not in the car. Okay.
I do not remember saying he was in the car at the police station.
That you lived with the murderer of your son for 5 days.
Objection to what counsel can believe.
How is it that you're so loyal to him?
I don't understand your question, nor do I know how to respond to that.
How is it that you were so afraid of him then, and 16 months later, you're not afraid of him anymore?
I never said I wasn't afraid of him.
So you're not afraid of him now, you're testifying.
No, I'm still afraid of him. We're going with hearsay?
Oh, yeah, your whole testimony has been hearsay, okay? Don't talk to me about hearsay.
Your Honor, this is argumentative.
It is. Your objection sustained. Pose a question, Mr. Cataldo. Don't argue with the witness.
I told my son Jason,
Ma'am,
not
wait for
come
a
back to
question.
Michigan.
Oh, no, let her talk.
Wait for a question.
All right.
We had to wait 16 months to hear this story about this intruder. Don't you believe, had you given the information earlier, we may have had a chance to go out and arrest him? Is your faith in the police department so lacking that you're going to let a murderer get away with it and you're going to take the rap?
But to this day, Donna says she's innocent. It was the masked man. And the one thing that remains is her DNA was not found on the victim, nor his on her.
You have technology and equipment that can detect blood after cleaning it. If there was something on me, if I did what you said, some of it would have showed on Ramsay. Some of me would have showed on Ramsay. Some of him would have showed on me. And you didn't bag and tag my clothes or anything.
Though, I mean, the story's absolutely ridiculous. You'd think that, in the year, from when she was arrested to going on trial, she could think of something a little bit better, best you can do, really? Come on. The defense tried. Well, they tried their best, I guess, God love them. They brought up multiple problems about the case, how the police did not follow up every possible lead, the lack of DNA evidence on Donna's body, and the question as to how a tiny woman like Donna could lift Ramsay into the bathtub. However, these were found to be, reaches, and after a short deliberation, the jury found Donna Scrivo guilty of first-degree murder. On June 23rd, 2015, the judge sentenced her to life in prison without parole for the disinterment and mutilation of a body, removing a body without the permission of a medical examiner, and, murder, that too. Donna, unsurprisingly, remains in prison to this day, and she still says she's innocent. She didn't do it. It was this, mysterious, masked man. The thing is, there's no real reason to do what she did. Not a whole lot to gain here. This was clearly premeditated and thought out, so a spur-of-the-moment rush of anger, which is the only thing I can kind of think of, well, that's not what happened. I mean, maybe she just wanted to leave, move to Texas, and was sick of her son. That now that his dad wasn't around to protect him anymore. Maybe there was a masked man, or maybe more likely it's projection of her guilt. Impressions and appearances were something that was very important to Donna Scrivo, and I guess she just wasn't having, the kind of first impression on people that she wanted to have the way things were going. Well, she's definitely got quite an image now. Devil Spawn comes to mind. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will see you as always real soon in the next one. Take care of yourselves. Mike out.